Bonjour à tous. À toutes les étudiants dans les écoles maintenant, s'il vous plaît, en considération dans ce qui récise pour l'international politique, continuez l'étudier les cours dans les écoles et dans le collège. Uh, I want to recommend to all the students and to myself just try to in the crisis time just continue on your education, and we are very lucky and happy. Now still situation is okay for us to continue the life despite of the uh, some crisis, and and study hard, and continue the life and working, and try to be as normal as much as is difficult, we know. Now, uh, uh, we continue on the second part of part I of the Hume's in a class of the philosophy in this subject, and what is the view of the Hume. Hume's now in this part is has a contention and has an, I don't want to say hate or as an enemy, but very adversary in front of the skepticism on a extreme skepticism on a Ferunian um, culture, which is part of the philosophy who makes uh, the make a panel and window for superstitious and for assumption and hermeneutic or attribute, and he doesn't like that because he's looking for a truth. Despite of the Nietzsche, after 1 century later, he's looking for a morality. He's looking for a truth in front of the abstruse and abstract. And philosophy of Pasteur is happy with this kind of the philosophy and this method and doctrine because it's based on a science and based on a material. And we explain after that how Hegel a little bit in a discussion and make a sketch between the skepticism and the Hume's atheism has a problem because he said I don't I know I don't have too much reason, but what I have right now is the last knowledge of the Copernicus and the Galileo and the Newton. But right now in the posteriori, which I explained, we talk about the transistor, about the AC in the laptops, transformator, and from the direct electricity to the electromagnet of the Tesla, and what's going on inside of our satellite or our modems or our computers, and after that the physiology of the neuron based on NDPH and ATP on an enzyme, and in the physiology of the nerves, how to DNA make this hyperbolic electromagnet to make alphabet and make a mathematics. Now, by this description, I start the second part of the uh, uh, part I of the Hume's, and hopefully to finish this first part of the what the Hume says. When suspension of judgment regarding to the truth of non-evident belief or dogma to achieve mental tranquility, because Ferunians or extreme skepticism said that objective knowledge of the true nature of things or ontology is unattainable, an argument so on both sides, religion as a dogma and philosophy so to withhold assent as agreeable to achieve peace of mind. Now, Hume said on behalf of the Clintons that they learned from classes and they can find it. They can find it. And the Hume says, whatever you're talking is based on your primary school. You went and to study the alphabet and learning the writing and the mathematics. So all you are belong to the science, and you cannot defend by the science for other subjects. And it is a skeptic is antagonist of Stoic, and his sect is on Irenaeus' Maxim. But for Priori and ontology and epistemology and philosophy of science, in perception of existentialism by hedonism and Epicurean, get rid of the pain, fear through modest pleasure and simple friendship and understanding nature customs to eliminate fear of gods and death, focusing on achievable desire, hedonism, but moderate form. Now, I explain to my students what is the difference between the Epicurean and Epictetus or Marcellus on a Stoic. Hedonism or Epicurean is a friendship and a happy life. For example, I am a doctor and a specialist in neurology or cardiology, and I work in the hospital. I'm doing my job, I do my surgery, have a good relationship, and I finishing my job after 2-3 days, 2 operation per week or 1 operation a week. And rest of the week, I wanted to do my research and have my entertainment with my family, with my love. And I come to the hospital for next, or as a parliamentary member, I'm doing my jobs for my region, my district, and or you are a judge, you doing your judgment, but the rest of that I want to make my research and studying and happy life, sport, nature. But when you getting from judge to the grand judge, said hello to grand judge and judges. When you are grand judge or when you are responsible of, for example, chairman of the hospital, now your job is from Epicurean or hedonism or happiness is getting inside the other way of life, which is a stoic based on a tolerant judgment, wisdom, because the chair of the hospital have to think to the responsible of the cooking, kitchen, and culinary for food nutrition of the all different patients. After to thinking about the construction of the hospital, to the plumber, electricity, and maintenance of the hospital, after thinking about the landscape of the hospital, after thinking mainly to what's the concern of the all commission of the doctors for the hospital regarding to the equipment and the culture and the problem solving, and after talking about the nurse and administrative officer. So he have to think to all elaborate of the administrative of the hospital. At this time, he cannot say just in my life I want to be hedonism, Epicurean, and happy, but his life he have to be happy, but meanwhile he have to think to other responsibility and commitment as a chairman or owner of this hospital. Or grand judge have to think to the all judges and the all provinces and different of the provinces and different of the state and culture during the history of the country for the good judgment. In Germany, same. In England, same. France, same. Or in the Canada or United States. So this is This is a different way of the thinking of the between Epicurean and Epictetus, or Stoic and hedonism. Stoic, to do your mood tempers in every mood. When Stoic raise the mind in a frenzy virtue, in a sense of some kind of honor or public good. Extreme bodily pain and suffering won't prevail over such a duty, and be possible smile and rejoice in the middle of being tortured. Then how to be philosopher? uh, there was I had for example some black people or Muslim or some part of the community of migrant. They follow us in the street, and I said, okay, to be relaxed, a smile, or even in you are in a courtroom, you're under pressure by the atmosphere, by bad looking, and I said, just a smile. How can I be a smile while I'm under following and on a harassment? And so this is a part of for real philosopher have to be said, that is not the philosophy. You have to defend the good atmosphere and friendship in a society, or in classroom or a study work. So himself up to such a frenzy, and imagine himself bearing the actuous pain he can conceive. But how is he to maintain the frenzy itself? So, frenzy is a part of the state or period of uncontrolled excitement behavior, which is usual in some ritual custom in Africa. They doing or frenzy in the, I explained in the previous text, in the ritual inside of the um, uh, their places like a temple or mosque. They will be excited and will be in anesthesia, or sometimes philosopher they are frenzy inside of the itself for the reason. And this is partly bad, because you have to explain what is the reason and what is the himself or itself, and not to be prejudiced like a non-real philosopher. His frame of mind released, and he cannot brace it up again just by wanting to do so. Other activities lead him astray, away from the correct path or direction. Misfortunes attack him unawares, and philosophy gradually sinks into being an ordinary person. And this is my complaint to the most of the philosopher. Most of the philosopher inside of the philosophy, they are not a real philosopher. They just memorize some of the books, because if real philosopher have to talk, have to contact, have to send the email to the society of the law, to the society of the sociology and the politics and all aspects of the fine of the arts, and they have to describe the pain and what's going on of the way of the life based on the good way of thinking. They make a better future in the culture. If not engagement and just to be inside of the class to do your subject and pass the course of the philosophy is not the real philosophy. And that is a make a difference Hume's between the others which I explained, like Locke or even the Hegel. And now Philo, on behalf of the uh, skepticism, is replied that Stoic means in the sky, not on a ground challenging view on a ground by its form, disposition. And impartiality is sort of the priest or clergyman who is like a duck, is waddling uh, on a street, who thinks he is a supernatural or belong to the spirit, while he needs, like other people, to the food and shelter. And its reason is the routine everyday life. And Philo said to the Clinters, or skepticism said to their atheism, by this method in skepticism, a school of Zeno, virtue, and steadfastness, which seem astonishing to us today, vain wisdom, all, and false philosophy, with pleasing sorcery, magic, could charm pain. Um, Magic is part of the our hobby right now. In every city, in every province, all the people is looking for a circus is coming, and they want to see all the handcrafting and see the animals and what the mm, crafting and the magic or miracle game is doing by the witches or something like that. And this part is shortly and partly is related to the our limited of senses, because we thinking is the true but is not the true. It's kind of the manipulate function, and is coming to the in the philosophy of sociology indirectly. Or when the fathers or parents or mothers goes with the kids to the some playground to play with the kids, like Chuck E. Cheese or some circus, they have to explain to the kids how this machine works, how the if the electricity is gone, all the game will be stopped. So all is based on energy. So kids at that times learning why they playing, they have to think how to be future manipulate for their future professional jobs. Good charm or pain of exide of fallacious hope, arms abjurate, braced with a stubborn patience, as if with triple steel, a skeptic on a narrowness of reason or uncertainty between who don't have any opinion, stoic or philosophy has a thoughts. So based on this conversation, skepticism is believed that the stoic is not part of the philosophy or good philosophy, because he has thinking on too much wisdom and tolerance. And partly is okay, he's right, but some way and some part of the life is no chance to be a stoic. As I said, the difference between who is the doctor in some department and who is the chief of the hospital. So life sometimes they make you to have a choice. But for Hume, as an atheist, a stoic is a part of the philosophy, not a skepticism. And that is important of the role of the tutor or prof to explain to the students what the Hume wanted to say. Speculative based on a conjecture, conclusion from uncomplemented information, far from skepticism of a speculative one. Thus, if he wants to be norm and acts like other, needs to engage in a scientific inquiries and acquisition in a various wants and human subject. End of the inference and deduction by Professor Wright. Now, continue by Hume. When a skeptic looking for a science not meant insincere with the skepticism, he is drawn for a certain pleasure and satisfaction, and that he finds in employing himself in that way. Or philosophy of religion in a modern life. Thus, common life, common life, like a scientist, force himself on a proceeding exact and careful general principle and conduct reasoning. Our experience widen and our reason strengthens, make a principle more general and comprehensive, engage in a scientific inquiries into such a subject is essentially the same as a reasoning about the common life. This is a defense of the Hume in front of the skepticism. Why Professor Wright is far more Hegel than Kant and Hume, not for thesis. The problem when I delete the Hegel pictures on my Instagram and why not? But Kant and Hume is more because Professor Wright is emphasized on a philosophy of infrastructure and constructive and fundamental and genesis and roots of the way of thinking based on science and based and reason based on science explanation. So Hegel, great philosopher for Professor Wright in a pragmatism and practical and in a ground. But despite of his context in several books for freedom in individual from the society and the politics as an enemy in front of the individual and the philosophy of the history and this, but he has a problem. His problem is way of thinking on some vocabulary and some philosophy, as he has a despite he has a dialectic for thesis and antithesis for synthesizing the life as actuality and real life, but he has a hermeneutic, he has a assumption, he has a conjecture, he has a presumption, as a assume, as an attribute, as a kind of the philosophy for attribute and make a panel for philosophy of religion. And he believes in directly as a kind of the itself is partly related to the supernature and something beyond of that of matter inside of the itself, and that is a make a problem for philosophy of Professor Rice. So at this point Hegel is an inferior and lower rank rather than Kant or Hume, and related connection is of the Hegel to philosophy of Christianity related to the discussion and argument what the Goethe he had with the Hegel. We can say the class of the Hegel is kindly related to the philosophy of the John Locke, because John Locke is sort of like a Hegel, is partly a part of the philosophy and agreement and assent on the philosophy of religion. And we discuss on Locke in the by Hume, and not for thesis and antithesis to synthesize, because it is actuality and human affairs or property of of material things, while speculation, conjecture, hermeneutic, interpretation, as a part of the philosophy for Hegel, is part of the Bible and makes a phenomenology of spirit, while Hume, in his sketch, said, when we look beyond, this is Hume, and this is a philosophy of Hume, when we look beyond human affairs and the properties of material things around us, when we carry our speculation, speculation, carry our speculation into, this is a question, this is a role of the tutor and prof have to explain to the students. This is what is the speculation and assumption of the Humes as a real philosophy. He says four items. First, the to eternity, infinite, no time, before and after the present state of things. Second, the creation and formation of the universe. The existence, third, the existence and properties of the spirits. Fourth, the power and operation of the universal spirit existing as an omnipotence. No beginning and no end, unchanging or incomprehensible, not discern, not perceive. This is the core of the philosophy of the Hegel. And we have too many regulation of the, not law of the religion, regulation of the religion, in any religion, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Taoism, in the monotheism, and they make some like a joke, like a teasing. But if you put the this like this, you doing fail in the operation of the praying the ritual, and Hume says, as a citizen, when you enter to the ritual holy places like a church or like a temple, as if you are a xenophobia and you come into the other country and you have to follow the new law of the civic law for their society. Or we had a statue in the Abraham. Uh, they had a statue like or Islam. They had a statue like a Hobal is the biggest one, and after Prophet put the axe on the statue and destroyed the other statue, and said, "Who did that?" And I said, "This biggest statue." And the people asked, "The statue cannot destroy the other statue." And they said, "How you pray?" The statue and temple and this symbol and this stone which cannot destroy the others. But the problem was, so we have to pray who? The God. Where is the God? Is not matter. So you cannot see because you have a limited sense to see this omnipotence. So we fell from the hole inside the well. And Hume said, when we consider all of this on matter, we have to be very unskeptical and not worry that we have here gone quite beyond the reach of our faculties. So long as we can find this man, Hume, for 18th century, middle of the 18th century, he, despite of the science, is not improved. He's won the science for the next couple century. He won exploded by minimum update knowledge of what the Newton did and the Copernic did. He want to defend on his philosophy for true philosophy based on the reason of the science, and that is admirable and praisable for his time. and not worry that we have gone quite beyond the reach of our faculties, so long as we confine our theories into trade, morals, or politics, or criticism. We make a continual appeal to the common sense and experience. These appeals strengthen our philosophical and scientific conclusion, or at least partly remove the suspicions to any reasoning which is very subtle and delicate. While in theology we don't need bring reasoning based on a common experiment just when we have most need it. In his example, like alienation, like xenophobia in foreign countries, who suspicious to break the regulation of the relations in a holy places like a temples. And now, Philos, on behalf of the skepticism, continues. Main skeptic is if reason is considered as abstract, or Hegel in his books in philosophy of right talking about the concrete. It provides invincible argument against itself, so reason discredits itself. So itself cannot outweigh the more slight and more natural argument derived from the senses and experiment and skepticism by stick holding of the mind in between itself and natural rooting life based on a reason, and that is a triumph of skepticism. Let me at this point, that is correct. Skepticism at that time, because science has a uncertainty, he doesn't know. We never forget that Louis Pasteur, he made by microscope with the Koch and other to find the first microorganisms as a pathogen, like a bacteria and virus. They made that, and they realized on a 19th century. So science is weak, but science is confess I'm weak and I don't know. And skepticism at this point, he attacked the philosophy. If you don't know, so you have to be on a skepticism way and on uncertainty, say I don't know. But you emphasize all the time on a reason itself, himself, and say science, what? Other side you say you don't know. So skepticism is correct, not real philosophy based on atheism. And now, Hume answers on behalf of the Clintons, replied, as a philosophy of Hume to skepticism, that your doctrine, skepticism, is odd with your behavior because you refer to the conduct of everyday life. As the evidence is found, you adhere it, but in your abstruse points of theory or looking for a certainty and assurance, it's not ridiculous to reject. It's not ridiculous to reject Newton's explanation of the wonderful phenomena of the rainbow. Why? So here is a question. Hume says, why you make it ridiculous of the contention and argument of the Newtons as a last update information discovery of the science, especially in physics, because that time still biochemistry or thermodynamic was not discovered. Because, and Hume answered to this, because you ignore the Newton, because it is too refined and subtle, gives a minute anatomy of the rays of light as a subject as too refined for human comprehension. by absurd skeptic, what would you say on a Copernicus and Galileo for the motion of the earth on this general ground of your time life, because these subjects are too magnificent and remote to be explained by the narrow and deceitful reason of mankind? So, his answer of the Hume to them, Copernicus and Galileo, based on evidence, gives you proof, but you thinking this is a craft, this is deceit, this is a sorcery. There is indeed a kind of the crude and ignorant skepticism, as you rightly remarked, that gives the common people a prejudice against things they cannot easily understand, to reject every principle that requires elaborate reasoning to prove and establish it. This sort of the skepticism is fatal to knowledge, not to religion instead. Religion, extraneous prophecy, who to their essence, not only to the great truths of theism and natural theology, but even to the most absurd doctrine that traditional superstition has recommended to them, and hardly believe in witches. Talking about the witches right now, my duty in the last decade of the 20th century and the first initial of the 21st century, we had a kind of the culture of the literature as a novel and in the movie, like a Harry Potter. He was kid and right now he's a mature guy. But what they did, what they destroyed our culture. Sort of the philosophy of the luck, sort of the philosophy of religion, and bring the magic for the kids, crafty, witches, sorcery, miracle, magic to teach the kids. This is a animation. This is education in the school. What a shame. What happened for our new future kids? What the bad panel and window we did for our kids. Refuse to refuse to discern and proposition in Euclid geometry. A skeptic at a school push their researchers into the most abstruse corners of science. So you are looking for evidence in science, light, body, food, digestion, or bounds of the atoms into pebbles are not clear and abstruse because looking for evidence and proof, so they are incomprehensible, so not able to draw a general line for them. So why not the same in theological and religious to do so? So Hume right now complain, yes, our science is not complete, but if our science is not complete, so do same way of the uncertainty for religion as well. And Hume continue, why not rejection them based on a lack of evidence of your conduction in your routine life, on the general ground that human reason is insufficient? Isn't this discriminatory attitude a planned proof of prejudice and passion? Hume, on behalf of the Clintons, continues, as a reality of life, yet live in a 1 century experience of life with electricity, while for Hume was with history of telescope and later on microscope of knowledge mirror and lens. So Professor Rai is talking, the Hume's time is still electricity was not discovered. It still his microscope is not, and Louis Pasteur is not, still he was not born. And his last updated knowledge is a telescope, Galileo, Copernicus, and the Newton. And now I continue on Hume. But your own conduct in skepticism in every circumstance refutes your principle and firmness on just, on fairness, on all of the received maxims of science, morals, prudence, and behavior. And Hume, on behalf of the Clintons in atheism, continues to reply to skepticism to demand that I don't say that you are a liar or not a sect of philosophers. Imperatorily in Sisyphus in Canadian politics mentioned that liars or lawyer or lie is bad, but in politics is inevitable. Otherwise, no vote and no gain of the power in fake of democracy, which is sort of unitary party morality. And some say, let's elites at a school educate caucus for their own election on behalf of the people. Some new modern political philosophy, they say, let the people not the vote for people, because people doesn't know what is the caucus is doing. So let the people just select the framework of the caucus idea, and let the caucus and the political parties they make a vote for themselves. But it still is on a future and processing of reasoning in a philosophy of politics. Or for example, in COSMA or NAFTA, to change like European Commission and provinces and states in each country to be on balance of the federal or confederation provincial parliamentary system as an independent country, or independent revenue from government by judiciary to control political scheme, corrupt. All and all is a modern philosophy, Professor Rai versus current apparent order, but in disorder of hers in skepticism. End of the quote. Now continue on Hume. Hume, but I will say no offense, meant that they are a sect of comedian or teasers. For my part, certainly choose entertainment something less puzzling and abstruse, that skeptical philosophy in such a metaphysical subtleties and abstraction. So a novel, a history seems more natural recreation. Or I said in some of my writing on a Charles Chaplin comedies episodes, to be rich as a poverty actor for philosophy of sociology or social justice. And Hume continues on Hume, it is no use for the skeptic to distinguish science from common life or one science from another. In the argument to support side of the religion or natural religion, many principles of mechanics are based on a very abstruse reasoning, yet nobody with any degrees of scientific competence claims to be in the least doubt concerning to them, nor indeed does any theoretical skeptic. The Copernican system contains the thesis that the sun doesn't go around the earth, which is most surprising paradox and the one most contrary to our natural conception, to appearance, to our very senses. Yet even monks and inquisitors have had to withdraw their opposition to it. Will Philo, a thoughtful and knowledgeable man, cast doubt on a religious hypothesis which is based on a simplest and most obvious argument? Means uh, my deduction means science has a deserve to doubt for unreliability of human faculties. And now Clintus look at the dema or atheism, looking at the skepticism and say rather curious fact in the history of the science. After philosophy was joined to the religion of the people, when Christianity was first established, religious teachers commonly denounced reason, the senses, and every principle derived merely from human research and inquiry. This is a core sentence of Hume. Why? While Pastori, by discovering into Augustine 45 AD and Reformation Aquinas by helping from Aristotle and other Greek philosophy as a monk to prepare the culture Europe from medieval to enlightenment, where is Hume placed, and also the origin of Christianity into Abraham monotheism, always have along of the Greek goddess as a ritual attribution. End of the quote from Philosophy of Pastori. Now, continue on Hume. And Hume said, the reformers embraced ancient academic, here skeptics, and spread them down the years into every school, as such reasoning by all flowery praise of the excellency of the faith against natural reason. And now Pastori said here, natural reason is extended for Kant as a pure reason or cognitive intuition. For Pastori is a philosophy of neurons based on a biochemistry and biophysics laws, in thought of a magnet, in geometry, not Euclidean, but hyperbolic. It took centuries, Hume said, it took centuries for this contempt, disdain, despicable, for a reason to die down. This sentence of the Hume is very important. Locke seems like 1 century lived before the Hume. Locke seems to have been the first Christian to risk saying openly when Locke said that faith is nothing but a species of reason, that religion is only a branch of philosophy, and that the arguments that have always been used in discovering all the principles of the theology, natural and revealed, are just like those that have been used to establish truths in moral, politics, and physics. The miserable use that Bayle, the complaining of the Hume to the Bayle is related. Bayle was Pierre Bayle, a skeptic philosopher, 1647 to 706, simultaneously by Locke, who exiled to the Holland and wrote a dictionary of Christianity, Reformation, true skeptic, and evil tolerant. That is I found from University of California for this part. Who was the Bayle? And and Hume doesn't like him. And other free thinkers made of the philosophical skepticism of the church fathers and first reformers, namely their use of it as a weapon against religion, had the effect of widening the acceptance of the Locke's sensible opinion. And now Hume 1711 to 1776, and Kant 1724 to 1804, and now all those who claim to be thinkers assert in a way that atheist and skeptic are almost synonymous. That is, Hume said, the atheist and skeptic is synonymous, and just as it is certain that no man would sincerely declare himself a skeptic, I venture to hope that there are a few who seriously maintain atheism. So Hume want to say it's not the synonymous between skepticism and atheism. I'm a serious and honest man to want to find the truth, and I'm stand on atheism in front of the uncertainty and skepticism. And now skepticism by Philo as a skeptical tended to be philosopher, and he wanted to reply to the Hume. The excellent saying of Lord Bacon on this topic, that a little philosophy, and suddenly Clintus or Hume stopped his conversation and said, yes, makes a man an atheist. A great deal converts him to a religion. Let's talk about the deal. The pastor thinks on a deal, politics and cynicism by any means, but at end of the core or end of the road is a budget and budget, finance and nationality in reality of geometry. And Philo as a skepticism replied that atheists are double fool in their heart and their lips to say that no God, but also utter that impiety from indiscretion. Discretion means willing and tendency to the keeping the secret and private, and indiscreet means your readiness to reveal. And indiscretion and imprudence, lack of wisdom and good judgment, without considering potential risk of its consequences in finance or personal safety. But imprasori can be extended into judiciary and justice when judge and lawyer, like attorney, barristers, solicitors, makes a deal to sometimes not several truths completely. That is the problem. Sometimes in judiciary, especially in a small claim, the judge is coming talk to this lawyer as an applicant to the defendant and the respondent, and I said, look, we have to make a deal. Otherwise, if we go to this, he goes to the, for example, 40 years jail, and after 40 years jail, how you want to take the money? So let's make, for example, 5 years jail, and after your client get this money for punishment, like make a deal. So sometimes this is a streak of judgment. Sometimes you cannot be truly in a truth on a judgment, because life is not like, for example, all the police, they say, I don't want any drug to be sold in any restaurants. It's not happening. If you have to a little bit close your eyes, because otherwise all the restaurants will be bankrupted, because sometimes some customers is coming, and in some custom they have some habit in a moderate way. That is a sort of the Epicurean, or let's a little bit have a truth and justice, but not too much. Close the window and the strict society, or uh, the other part, we can talk about the what is you did. You lost your life, Hamish. You lost your life. Hamish lost all the money, but Hamid uh, is changed to be Hamish, as who has a country, who has a nation, who has a reason, who now has a love in him, and who has a love in his philosophy and in atheism, and he knows the truth, and he knows the lovely to be in search of the science, love the kids and love the society despite all the problem. And that's why he is. Je suis. Pourquoi? Parce que je pense. Why? Such people are atheists. The skepticism says such people are atheists or shallow philosophers, but sincere and serious cannot be much of a threat. This is a hume answer. Sincere and serious cannot be much of a threat, but as a skepticism, I am half fool, idiot, since cannot forbear, as a refrain, to say something that occurs to me, rising out of the history of religion and a religious skepticism which you, Hume or Clintus, entertain us. It seems to me that there are strong symptoms of priestcraft. What a vocabulary Hume is using, priestcraft, in the whole course of the evidence. Priestcraft, in dictionary says, refers to the manipulative or self-serving practice of religious leaders using their office for personal gain, power, or praise, rather than for the spiritual welfare of their followers, often involving cunning, deceit, or twisting doctrine. So, preaching for money gain while in common life, set themselves up as a spiritual life for worldly rewards, contrasting with the true service. Yeah, now Persian or Arab war in Gulf Strait. Now, continue. During ignorant ages, such as those following the abolition of the ancient schools, the priests saw that atheism and deism, belief in supreme being, high power who not interfere at universe, or heresy of any kind could only come from the presumptions. What a vocabulary Hume is using here. We can use in a judiciary or court, presumptions. Presumptuous means in dictionary who fails to observe his limit. In a inside the routing life, in the street, on the street, the people said he's rude, big mouth, snobby, but he is presumptuous. Hume is presumptuous. Hamish is presumptuous, who fails to observe his limits, but he found the truth. Questioning of common opinions, and from the belief that human reason is equal to every task. In those time, now this is a complaint of the skepticism. You always thinking about the reason, and reason doesn't have evidence because reason is still it doesn't know so much, and we answer to them or priori reason is on a progress. In those time, Pharaonians and academia of skeptic through education had a power and great influence over the minds of the men, like current days on a common senses and understanding, so no longer he was governed. Or Nietzsche talks about the revaluation or subjectivity of man as a human, which is freedom for Hegel, or from individual to society. And these days, I mean the Hume times in 1750, 1750, when education has a much less influence and men increased contacts throughout the world. And nowadays, AI, world trade, climate control, natural resources have taught them to compare the principles that are accepted in a different nations and ages. And now question of priori, why Singapore is different between other neighbors? What is the difference of the Korea and Japan and or China? And what is wrong with the West capitalism or new modern social of China? Democracy elected in a short term are pre-elected by false fake elites at the parliament, while ignore the people after gaining tenure at the parliament, and military from protection to aggression for business, and how as a common sense to provide AI, intelligent artificial, like all dogs with all colors to make a love in sexism beyond varies in culture and ritual as human to all human. Nietzsche. Pressurized. Continue on Hume by a skeptic of Philo. Our cunning divines have changed their whole system of philosophy and talk language of Stoic, Platonist, and Aristotelian, not that of for a skeptic who is suspensions of judgment and idea, and for Nietzsche is destroying morality and conscience, and for Hume is a bad method to gain truth. End of the inference by the professor. And Hume continues by Philo as a skepticism. If no trust reason, how to leads us to religion? This revered clergyman, gentleman can be dependent on to identify the system that best suits their purpose of keeping an ascendancy or authority over mankind. It may be skepticism in one age, dogmatism in another, making in their favorite principle an established doctrine. Clintus and Hume, as the atheists said or cited, it is very natural for men to embrace the principle by which they find they can best defend their doctrines. We can account for this reasonable behavior without dragging priestcraft into the history, who is really confirmed through religion our worldly in eternity, so serve to silence the complaints of atheists libertarians, and free thinkers of all kind. And the last part of the Hume, he says, now they are quiet. They don't answer to and they said, let's ignore the Hume. Let's he talks and we continue our life for surviving. Okay, this is the end of the part I of the dialogue of the concerning to nature of the religion by the Hume and some deduction of the professor and this. And I read and think and make a note and will continue in the future. Thank you very much.